Yo, what's up, YouTube? How are y'all doing? How are y'all doing this Saturday? I had fun doing the live stream last night. Happy Saturday. Apologize, I'm a couple minutes late. Kind of rushed to get back home and eat some lunch. I've been kind of late these past couple live streams, so my apologies. But yeah, like I said, I explained in the last live stream, this week has been crazy. And God's given me revelation about just that I've been overworking myself doing these YouTube videos the wrong way. So I kind of got to a point to where I know I needed to change how I do it. And if I kept going down that same route, I was going to burn out. So it took me to just be overworked and have it affect my actual health to realize that, hey, things need to change. So yeah, I've been tired these past couple of days, been not feeling good, but things are on up and up because now I know what I need to do, what I need to focus on with my YouTube channel in a way that's not going to overwork myself, in a way that's going to bring me more rest, more peace. So if you're if you're watching right now, say what's up. Let me know how everything sounds. And due to this past week, how I was so busy, I did not prepare. I did not prepare for this live stream. I did not prepare to add my own input. So it's going to be in real time. It's going to be adding input in real time. And it may be more of just watching it together than me adding input, because I don't want to speak on things I didn't prepare too much on. But if I have something to add and I know what I'm talking about, I'm going to say something. But yeah, this is the Mother's Day sermon that was last Sunday. We're going to go through that, watch that together. And perhaps if I have enough energy after this, we might look at some more content.
Happy Mother's Day, Mom. I love you so much.
All right. Good morning, church. Happy Mother's Day to you. Those are kids from our different campuses. Some of you know those kids. Some of those are your kids. So they'll tell the truth right in front of the camera and everything, right, about you. So love the honesty of kids. Well, it is Mother's Day, and instead of saying something generic to all of you moms, I sort of scripted some words together to speak to all the different kinds of moms that are here today. And so to the brand new mothers, we congratulate you. I know you're probably barely awake right now, but congratulations to you. To the mothers of preschoolers who are trying to keep your head above water, we are rooting for you. We know it's hard work. You're in the trenches every day. Thank you for what you do. To the mothers who have experienced a miscarriage or lost a child, we grieve with you. Our heart hurts for you. Can't imagine the pain that you must be feeling. And so our hearts go out to you, and we're praying for you. To the mothers who have opened up your hearts and homes to foster or adopt, we applaud you. We celebrate you. What an amazing to be mom to a kid that isn't biologically yours. That's amazing. And those of you, many of you have done that, and we're so proud of you. To the expecting mothers, we're so excited for you, whether it's a boy or a girl. I know there's some excitement in your home, and we can't wait to celebrate with that with you. To those who have a mother's heart, but have been struggling to conceive.
Not sure how long
we're here for you. We don't know why you haven't been able to get
Not sure how long this part lasts, but I might skip toward the actual sermon.
Pregnant, but know that be your church for you, whichever you want us to be. We're right there with you. We're excited and sad for what you're. We're so sorry for your loss. I can't imagine. I don't know what that feels like yet, but I can't imagine what my world would be like without my mom. And some of you, that's your year. That's been many years for you.
To those who lost their mothers, my condolences to that. I actually saw somebody when I was actually at the sermon. It was like a meet and greet period, and I forgot what I said, but she said that her mom's not here anymore. I wasn't expecting her to say that, but and she started tearing up. Yeah, and I just sometimes I don't know how to react in those situations, but she's turned away and kind of I guess she might have been just didn't want to talk at the time. But after the service, I gave her a hug and told her I was sorry for her loss. But I haven't experienced that. I can't imagine how lost would be for those who don't have their mothers. My mother's still in this world. My dad's still here. None of my like immediate family, meaning my mother, father, or brother, or anything, has passed. So I really haven't experienced that really, really, really close loss yet. But to those who have lost their mothers, my condolences.
And so we grieve with you. To the spiritual mothers in the room, we're so grateful for you. You've just adopted these women in your life and you've invested in them and discipled them and taught them and loved them. And so we're so grateful for you. To the mothers who are currently estranged from your children, we're praying for our teenagers. But seriously, moms, you honestly do make such a difference in the world. I know I wouldn't be who I am without the love and encouragement of my mom. I know my kids would not be who they are, the four amazing. Celebrate you moms, you really are amazing. You deserve more than a day, okay? But at least you have a day, you deserve so much more, but we're so grateful for you and thankful for all that you do. You really are the best. Now, with that said, I thought it might be interesting for us on this Mother's Day to look at a moment in the life of Jesus where he had a conversation with his mother, where he had a sort of back and forth with his mother. John, who is one of Jesus's disciples, one of his closest friends and followers, actually records this conversation for us in his account of Jesus's life. And this conversation happens right before Jesus's first public miracle. However, John doesn't refer to this moment as a miracle. He calls it something else. John calls it a sign. He calls it a sign. Again, Matthew, Mark, Luke, they refer to these things as miracles. That's how most of us view these things, these amazing things Jesus did as miracles. But John calls it a sign. And a sign, just so you know, a sign is, and you know this, a sign points to something. A sign directs you to know something or to do something. A sign communicates information or gives you information that you wouldn't know otherwise without that sign. And this and John repeatedly uses this word sign throughout his account of Jesus' life to refer to the miracles. So as John really documents all the details of Jesus' life and ministry, he wants the reader to understand something. He wants those of us who read that account to know Jesus is not simply performing miracles. Yes, he's doing that, but that's not all he's doing. Jesus is telling us something.
Yes, everything that he did was for a purpose. It wasn't just a miracle for a miracle's sake. He did it for a purpose.
The miracles that he does, the things that he do, they're pointing to something. And the something that Jesus is telling us through each of the amazing and wonderful things that he does, and John mentions 7 of them in his account of Jesus' life, but the something he's telling us through these signs is that Jesus is the one and only Son of God. And the signs that Jesus performed aren't just because, hey, it'd be cool to do a miracle.
He was revealing who he was. He was showing who he was by what the miracles that he did.
His signs point to who he is. They point to the fact that he is the Messiah, the one and only Son of God. Now this morning, we're gonna look at the first of these 7 signs that John mentions in his account of Jesus' life, a sign that in so many ways launches Jesus' public ministry. Here's how John begins this account. On the 3rd day, a wedding took place at Cana in Galilee. This is not far from where Jesus grew up, by the way, about 3 miles. Jesus' mother was there. She probably knew the family. And Jesus and his disciples had also been invited to the wedding. So there's this wedding happening in this rural, kind of like Nazareth was, this rural village in Cana. And Jesus and his disciples have scored an invite. They've been invited to this wedding. They're on the guest list. Mary, Jesus' mother, is also there. And in fact, as we'll see in just a minute, she seems to be somewhat involved in some of the planning aspects of this wedding. Almost like a coordinator, it seems. Now, I don't know how much you know about first century Jewish weddings. I doubt you know a lot, but our modern day celebrations, as fantastic and wonderful as they tend to be, pale in comparison to their ancient counterparts. When Robin and I got married some 25 years ago, and here's what we looked like on our wedding day. I had hair, that's me. But when we got married some 20, almost 26 years ago now, on August 2nd, we invited all these people to show up to Covington, Virginia, and to enjoy us and celebrating our union as husband and wife. And we threw the best party we could possibly throw. We ate cake, we drank punch, we smashed cake into each other's faces, you know, those sorts of things. All the things you're supposed to do to celebrate, you know, the union of a husband and wife. But having, and ours only lasted like 2 to maybe 7. But having a wedding that only lasted for like 5 hours, 6 hours in ancient Israel was unthinkable. They didn't just last a day or 2 days. Sometimes they lasted even an entire week. And so And because this particular wedding that we're going to look at is taking place in the tiny town of Cana, was probably the event of the year, which means it lasted at least a week. It was a week-long celebration of this husband and wife coming together to be married. So the week's actually arrived. They're celebrating. Probably it's midway through the week. We don't know exactly when. But the family, everybody's having just the best time celebrating this family. However, as much fun as everyone seems to be having on this wedding day, and as happy as everyone seems to be for this new couple, Mary, again, who's involved in the planning aspects of this wedding, more than likely, becomes aware of a potential catastrophe, a wedding disaster. And when Mary realizes she has this potential disaster on her hands, and you're about to see what it is, so she does the only thing she can think of when she realizes the severity of the situation. She goes to the only person she can think of who might be able to do something about this before it gets too out of hand.
Jesus.
Notice what John records for us. When the wine was gone, Jesus' mother said to him, "They have no more wine." So at some point, again, during the celebration, and maybe it's day 1, but more than likely it's day 3, day 4, day 5. It's been a minute. But at some point, and it doesn't seem like anyone else is aware of this problem just yet, but Mary, who's behind the scenes, making this happen, she's coordinating so many things, realizes that they have run out of wine. Now, in that culture, to run out of wine would have brought shame and embarrassment upon this newly married couple. Specifically, it would have brought shame and embarrassment upon the groom because he would have been the one responsible for making sure they had enough. And this blunder would have potentially haunted them for the rest of their lives. In fact, in the first century, they could have even been fined or sued for not adequately providing for their guests. So this is not a minor deal. This is no small problem. This is not like the cake's chocolate instead of vanilla. It's bigger than that. This is not like the DJ played the wrong song at the father-daughter dance, okay? This is about the worst thing that could have happened at a first century wedding. Now, fortunately, at this point, most of the guests seem to be unaware of this problem.
And just reading the Bible, understanding it more, especially in the New Testament, especially this book in the Gospels and this whole situation. When I first became a Christian, I just stopped drinking alcohol entirely. And part of the reason was because I guess I just believed it was something that I probably shouldn't do as a Christian. I was somewhat self-righteous when I became a Christian, when I was a babe in Christ. And I just thought, hey, you know what? Alcohol is for the world. And me as a Christian, I should just stay sober 100% of the time. No, let me retract that. You should be sober, as the Bible says to be sober-minded. But what I meant to say, let me rephrase that, because we should be sober. Because there's a scripture that says, be sober-minded, for your adversary, the devil, prowls around or goes around like a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour. So yes, sobriety is essential. However, what I meant to say is that to have no alcohol ever, the Bible doesn't say that. The Bible doesn't say that, unless, this is probably the one exception, is if it's a stumbling block for you. Meaning maybe you had a passive alcohol addiction, and even just a little bit of alcohol, one drink of wine, low alcohol wine, it will bring you into a downward spiral, bring back memories, get you back in the downward spiral of becoming a drunkard again. Then you should probably avoid it entirely. But I never had a past of being a drunkard or being addicted to alcohol. And this story that he's going over of Jesus' first miracle, it made me really think that, hey, as a Christian, it doesn't mean that I have to completely avoid alcohol. In fact, one of Jesus' miracles was to turn water into wine. Some scholars will argue and say that this wine had no alcohol in it. I don't believe that that's true. I really believe that that's not true. And then if it is true, I like to really hear proof of that, because if it doesn't have any alcohol in it, then it's just inherently grape juice. So, I mean, wine was drunk definitely in New Testament times a good bit. Now, to be drunk off of wine is a different story. Have a glass, have 2 glasses, however much you can handle while not being drunk, while not taking you out of sobriety. I think it's fine. I think it's fine. And again, if it's a stumbling block for you, if you had a past alcohol addiction, maybe you should just avoid it entirely. But I recently found more, I guess, liberty in being a Christian, being like, okay, I can have some wine. I can have a glass or two. I can have maybe a margarita. Just don't get drunk. Just don't get drunk. And this is what I do personally. You do what you feel you can handle.
Problem. It hasn't yet reached them. But Mary, who again is helping pull this party off, becomes aware of this, realizes this is a disaster waiting to happen. And when she does, she immediately goes to Jesus and says, hey, Jesus, they have no more wine. Now there's some theories about why does Mary go to Jesus in this moment? Some people think that she is merely making Jesus aware of this problem. You know, she's just saying, hey, Jesus, I don't know if you're aware of this or not. You know, kind of saying, hey, do you have any thoughts? Just kind of, any advice you can give me? Some people think that she's asking Jesus to break the news to the family. Hey, Jesus, you're really good with people. You're really good with words. Can you tell them that we're out of wine? But most people think that she is asking Jesus to help this bride and groom save face in some way. She's recruiting Jesus to help her. She's asking Jesus to solve the problem. And this is most likely what's happening here. And this makes sense because Mary, after all, knows who Jesus is, right? I mean, she remembers the visit from the angel telling her who her son was gonna be. She's well aware of this. She understands that Jesus is the unique, one and only, perfect Son of God. So when she tells Jesus they have no more wine, she's saying more than that. She's saying that she believes that Jesus can come up with a solution to this problem. That Jesus will know not just what to say, Jesus will know just what to do. Now, again, it appears that no one else is even aware of this problem yet. The wedding celebration is still in full swing. You know, the cover band's still playing music. The disciples are still doing the cha-cha slide. You know, all those things are happening still. They're having a good time. But the party is this close, okay, to coming to a screeching halt. In fact, unless someone does something and does it quickly, this party is about to come to a premature end. And this is why Mary has approached Jesus. And surely, if anyone can do something about this, surely Jesus can do something about this. But notice what Jesus says. Woman, why do you involve me? Jesus replied. Now, I would advise all of you to never begin a sentence with the word woman, first of all. But just so you know, in first century Israel, it's completely different. This was a way of saying man.
Yeah, it translates differently. It sounds so disrespectful if you do that today.
In English, it just sounds like, dude, that's rude. And it is rude if you say that in English, especially if you call your mom woman. I don't recommend that either. But Jesus is not being rude. He's saying, what, you know, he's saying, ma'am, you know, why do you involve me? And really what he's doing is this.
Okay, ladies, I know I'm not alone when I say.
What's going on? Oh my goodness, these commercials, what the world? Come on.
Having large boobs.
Stumbling
can be such a
block,
struggle.
let's hurry up and
But
skip
this?
that. Why? Look at the devil. Man, look at Satan, y'all. I'm doing a Bible study review. Commercial comes out of nowhere, showing all kind of breasts and cleavage and all this mess. That commercial has nothing to do with my interest. And Google's supposed to know what I'm interested in, right? Aren't they supposed to know that? And they know everything about what you like, what you don't like. The devil trying to invade this stuff. But he has no place here. Let's get back.
Mother know that as much as he loves her, he can no longer be about his mother's business. And here's why. It is time for him to focus on his Father's business. It's time for him to launch into what he really came to the.
Yeah, that's what you're supposed to do. Stuff like that comes up. Flee sexual temptation.
This world for. Now, with that said, Jesus is not saying he won't help her with her request. He doesn't really say yes or no if you look at it. He's just setting the record straight in that moment on their relationship. And then Jesus says these mysterious words. He says, my hour has not yet come. And there's some debate about these words, and it might seem like Jesus is saying, now, you know, I'm just not quite ready to do a miracle, but as we'll see in just a minute, this is obviously not what he's saying. Instead, if you read the rest of John's account, you'll see that Jesus says something similar on 3 or 4 other occasions. And every time Jesus uses these exact words, he says these words in this order. Every time he uses it, he's referring to the hour of his death. He's, in other words, at this wedding, everybody's celebrating, but at this wedding, Jesus is not thinking about the wedding. Jesus is thinking about the funeral. While everyone else is celebrating and drinking from their cups, Jesus is thinking of a different cup, another cup. He's thinking from the cup of suffering that one day he will have to drink from. He's thinking about that inevitable day that's approaching. Now, I don't think Mary understands what Jesus means in this moment. She probably gives him a confused, perplexed look. In fact, I can only assume she must have been more than a little confused by his words. But notice how she responds anyway, not to Jesus, but to someone else. His mother said to the servants that are kind of gathered around, helping pull off this party, do whatever he tells you.
Jesus' mother knew what's up. Mary, do whatever he tells you. She knew. She knew what Jesus was about.
She doesn't really address Jesus. She just kind of looks at the servant, hey, do whatever he tells you. So Mary's not offended by her son's word. She doesn't feel disrespected or mistreated in this moment. She doesn't say, how dare you talk to me like that? I'm your mother. Instead, Mary absolutely understands that Jesus is in charge, that Jesus is in control, and she ultimately hands over the outcome of this entire wedding to him. More specifically, she tells these servants to do whatever he asks, however he asks it, however strange it might be what he asks. And then she gets out of the way. Now, at the same time, with that said, I'm not sure if she anticipates a miracle or not. I don't think that she does. I'm not confident she even has a clue as to what Jesus will do. But I think she does anticipate that her son will come up with some kind of solution, because she knows that if she doesn't know anything else, she knows that Jesus is wise beyond his years, because she's seen him even in the temple at the age of 12, like perplexing the religious leaders of that day with his wisdom and his maturity. And so she's like, okay, Jesus is gonna come up with some kind of solution. I don't know what, but Jesus will do something that will make everything better. John continues to tell us, he gives us some sort of context. He talks about the setting. He says, nearby, we assume they're in the kitchen area of some kind, stood 6 stone water jars, the kind used by the Jews for ceremonial washing. Each, these are large jars, holding from 20 to 30 gallons. So you get the sense that Jesus surveys the room, what do I have to work with here? He sees 6 stone jars, and these jars, just to be clear, are not for drinking from. John is sure to point out that these are jars used by the Jews for ceremonial washing. Now, John's original readers, the first century readers that kind of read this account for the first time, would have known exactly what these jars were used for, but most of us probably don't. We're like, what does that even mean? I don't know what ceremonial washing has to do. But Jewish people, especially devout Jewish people, before every meal and oftentimes at other times throughout the day, wouldn't necessarily go through the same ritual we have of washing our hands before dinner. We're using soap and we're getting the germs off. They would go through a more ritual of washing their hands. They didn't wash their hands for the same reason we do. We wash to get the dirt and the grime and the grease and the germs off. But they did it for more symbolic reasons, not sanitary reasons. In other words, in those days, when they poured the water, and sometimes they even dipped their water into it, they weren't doing it to get their hands, actually clean, but to sort of say, hey, I want to be morally clean before God as I prepare to eat my meal. And so that's what's happening in this moment. But Jesus seems to say, hey, I want to do, he's going to do something different with these jars. In fact, notice what he says next. Jesus said to the servants, fill the jars with water. So they filled them to the brim. Jesus tells these servants to fill these jars all the way up. And taking Mary's earlier advice, do whatever he tells you, they do exactly what he says. Now, with that said, I'm not sure what these servants are thinking as they fill up these water jars, but I'm sure they must have been muttering under their breath, Mary said that we needed more wine, not more water. Not sure what the point is of this exercise.
If I was one of the servants at the wedding, I'll be honest with y'all, I'd probably really just double think, what did he just ask me to do and why? Even though Mary said, do whatever he tells you to do, I'll be like, what are we doing? And why are we doing this? How is this going to help the situation? I'll honestly probably be thinking that.
Who does this guy think he is? What sort of craziness is he up to? Nevertheless, despite their questions, They fill the jars all the way up to the brim. And then Jesus gives them some instructions. And these instructions must have shocked them. Then he told them, now draw some out. Nobody ever drank from these. Now draw some out and take to the master of the banquet, the master of ceremonies. Jesus asked these servants to take some of this water from these ceremonial jars. Again, these jars that no one ever drank from. And he says, look, present this water, present this liquid to the master of the banquet. Now in this moment, these servants had to be thinking, Jesus is out of his mind. Like he's gonna drink water and he's gonna be like, wedding's off, celebration's over. He's gonna shame the groom in some way. That's just what they would have done. Maybe they're thinking, well, this is the last wedding we'll ever be asked to cater, be involved in, because we're gonna ruin this whole thing. I don't know what they're thinking exactly. But for whatever reason, they, look at what John says they do. They did so. They take the water to the master of the banquet. And the master of the banquet tasted the water that had been turned into wine. Now, John doesn't really tell us, so I'm not really sure if the water changed on the way to the master of the banquet, but at some point between when the water is poured into these stone jars and given to the master of ceremonies, it is transformed into wine. And John doesn't tell us, and this is the question I have, how did he do this?
That probably had to be the best tasting wine ever, y'all. Wine literally made by Jesus. I'm really curious how that wine tasted. Had to be the best wine.
Like, did he touch each jar? Did he do a little, mix it, use his fingers and mix it up in some way? Did he mutter some words under his breath and, some sort of almost like a spell, it seemed like? We don't really know how he pulled this off. But it doesn't really matter how. What matters is that somehow Jesus has turned this water into wine. Now, at some point after tasting this wine, the master of the banquet calls the groom over. And again, the groom has no sense that there's ever been a problem in the first place. So he calls the groom over and he says something to the groom and to everyone there. He says, everyone brings out the choice wine first and then the cheaper wine after the guests have had too much to drink. But you've done something different. You have saved the best till now. The master of ceremonies says, I've never been to a wedding where something like this happened, where this tactic was used. No one does this sort of thing. And this is true, right? I'll give you an example. For instance, if I invite you over to my house for dinner, I'm going to prepare the nicest meal that I can prepare for you. The choicest desserts. I am going to bring my best to you so that you can enjoy a meal fit for a guest. But after that meal is over, if you look at me and say, hey, Matt, I'm not trying to be rude, but I'm still hungry.
How many of y'all have done that before? I'm trying to think if I've done that before. Go over to somebody's house, they give me food and be like, hey, you know what? That food was good, but I'm still hungry. What else you got? Have I done that before? I think I probably done that when I was a kid, but I think when I became an adult, I held back more of that type of stuff just to be respectful, I guess, or to seem respectful. Probably wouldn't say it as an adult. Well, I might now because I'm more bold now as an adult, but anyways.
You should know the later food will not be as good as the former food. The Pop-Tarts from the pantry will not taste nearly as good as the cookies from the oven, right? The macaroni and cheese from the box will not taste nearly as good as the steaks on the grill.
Yeah, if you come over to my house and I prepare food for you, a great meal, and you say you're still hungry, you probably get some pretzels. You get some snacks, Pop-Tart, popcorn, something like that. Unless we really have some leftovers.
This is what this master of ceremonies is saying. He says, no one does this sort of thing. He's almost wondering out loud, why have you waited all this time to serve up what is obviously the perfect wine? No one does this. I've never seen this anywhere. And then without telling us what happens next, what do the guests say? How does the party, does it keep going? Notice how John wraps everything up. He says, what Jesus did here in Cana of Galilee was the first, there's that word again, of the signs through which he revealed his glory, through which he demonstrated that he is the Son of God. And his disciples believed in him. John tells us this is the first of the signs, the first in a series of signs that Jesus gave to reveal to who he is. And John also adds that his disciples believed in him. And it's not that they didn't believe in him before, it's that their confidence in him, their faith in him increases, strengthens, skyrockets because of this miracle, because of this moment, because of this sign.
As it should. As it should. If I see a human being, or if I see a man, and I see that he literally turned water into wine, that is not, according to physics, is not possible scientifically. And this man, if I saw that and he did it at a wedding, I'll be like, okay. Let me really focus on who you say that you are. You have done something that I have never seen before, that I didn't think was possible. I'm really going to take you seriously. I'm really going to believe more of what you say. My faith is going to increase in this person. I'm going to find out what you're about. I'm going to continue to follow you and see what's going on. That's wild.
In fact, while no one else except the servants really seems to understand what has happened at this point, the disciples clearly see what's going on. They understand that this is bigger than water becoming wine, although that's certainly huge. They understand that the old is passing away and the new has come. They understand that God has saved the best until now, and the best is Jesus. So they're connecting all of these dots in this moment. Now, I don't know if you've noticed, but there's a lot of questions that John doesn't answer in his account. Questions that I have, questions like, who's getting married? Who's the lucky couple? Does Mary expect Jesus to do a miracle, or is she just hoping he'll solve the problem? What kind of wine is this? How does Jesus even pull this off? And John doesn't deal with any of these questions or seem to be concerned with any of these questions because he wants everyone to be asking another question. He wants everyone else that's reading this account to be formulating a different question in their mind. And that question is this: who is Jesus? And throughout his accounts, these signs point to who Jesus is. And that's what he wants us to be concerned with, because the answer to who is Jesus is this: Jesus is the Son of God.
Amen.
Jesus is God in the flesh. In fact, John wants us to know that all we have to do to come to this conclusion is to look at the signs. Because these signs, and this is just the first of 7, 8 if you include the resurrection, but these signs clearly point to the fact that Jesus is the one and only absolutely unique, perfect, sinless Son of God. Now I'm gonna come back to that thought in just a minute, but before I do, I want us to also notice that John is communicating a number of other things. In fact, there's really a lot of potential applications that we can make this morning, but I'm just gonna make a few. And the first one is this: sometimes the party doesn't go the way that we hope it will, right? Sometimes, if I can bring this forward, life doesn't go the way that we hope that it will go. Sometimes life has a way of throwing us a curveball. And when this happens, and it does happen, and it's happened this week to many of you. But when this happens, we don't need to throw our own party, a pity party. Instead, what we need to do is we need to do what those people did, Mary did so many years ago. We need to go to Jesus. When we have a problem, any problem, however big or small, and we don't know what to do next, we need to go to Jesus. And we need to go to Jesus because this moment,
I just want to say I really like the sermons out of this church so far. Y'all been following the sermons and just been keeping up with the Bible studies. There's not too much of this that most of the mega church pastors do. Most of the mega church sermons talk about God's gonna bless you in some extraordinary way by the end of this week. You're gonna receive your breakthrough right now. In this moment, you're gonna have the biggest breakthrough of your life. There's none of this like false hope, teaching for itching ears stuff. That's so much that's just around the mega churches and coming out of the mega church pastor's mouth so much. And not even just the mega churches now. There's churches in my city. I stay in a pretty small city. They're not mega churches, but they still do sermons like this. It's all like centered around how God's going to bless you. And it's good to be encouraged. I'm not taking that away from the faith. I believe encouragement is good. Thinking about good things coming in the future is good. But what I really like about this church is it's not all about that. Matter of fact, I think it's mostly just centered on the Bible, explaining the Bible and how the Bible is to be interpreted and how it's to be applied to your life, rather than being focused on how God's going to bless you.
Miracle shows us that there's no problem, big or small, that is beyond his care and concern. I think John is also suggesting something else. Another application is we need to be ready to do what Jesus wants us to do when he wants us to do it. In the same way that those servants said, okay, well, Mary said to do whatever he says. We need to have that same mentality when it comes to what Jesus is still saying, what Jesus has said and what he continues to say. We need to be willing to do whatever he says, whenever he says it, however he says it. And even if it's as simple as, hey, we need to fill up those water jars to the brim. We need to do whatever Jesus is asking us to do. And then finally, I think more than anything else, maybe this communicates that Jesus is in the transformation business. And it's not that he was in the transformation business. Jesus is still in the transformation business. After all, Jesus didn't come to just change water into wine. Jesus came to change lives. Jesus came to turn our lives upside down, to make our lives not about us, but about him. Jesus is still in the transformation business. He came to change the lost into the found, those without hope into those who have an everlasting hope, those who are at war with God to those who have peace with God. Jesus is still in the transformation business. Now, for any of you, and there's probably some of you watching online, some of you in the room who are a little skeptical about this, that this even happened. And I can understand that, by the way. This seems sort of like difficult to believe. But John wants you to know, hey, John is declaring, I was there. I saw this. I saw the servants fill the pots with water. I saw the master ceremonies take a drink. I saw how the color changed. I saw it when it was water. I saw it was wine. I don't know. He said, I saw it. I saw it with my own eyes. And this isn't the only sign that John sees. Again, he records several others, 6 or 7 others. In fact, near the end of his account, he sort of tells us why he had to put all of this to paper. This is what he says near the end of his account of Jesus' life. Now, Jesus did many other, there's that word again, signs, in the presence of the disciples, me and my friends, which are not written in this book because just not enough room. That's how many amazing things that he did. But these are written, the ones I've chosen to include, are written so that you may believe, here's why I included these, that Jesus is the Christ. Here's what the signs are pointing to, the Son of God. And not just understanding who he is, but that by believing, you may have life in his name. Jesus said, John says, I recorded these signs, not so that you can be impressed with, oh, that's pretty spectacular. Oh, Jesus is kind of amazing. No, that you believe that he really is the Son of God. Mm-hmm. And that by believing, you may have life in his name. Some of you this morning perhaps are looking for a sign. And if that's you, and I don't mean this in an insulting way like Bill Engvall, but here's your sign, right? John is giving you the sign. Jesus is the Son of God.
Amen.
There's no doubt about it. And it's not just one sign, it's multiple signs that point to the reality that Jesus is the Son of God. And Jesus didn't just prove that he was the Son of God by turning water into wine or causing the lame to walk or the deaf to hear or the blind to see. Jesus proved that he was the one and only Son of God, capable of doing anything when he walked right out of the grave they put him in, declaring loud and clear, I am who I said I was. I am the Son of God. So if you're looking for a sign, and maybe you are a skeptic, and we love skeptics around here. If you're looking for a sign, I challenge you to read John's account of Jesus' life and see for yourself. Come to your own conclusions.
I believe that's one of the best books to read as a non-believer, the book of John.
Who Jesus is. And while you may not know it, the best has yet to come. Our best has come. And his name is Jesus. Heavenly Father, we thank you that you have sent your best. You sent your son to do something for us that we could never do for ourselves. God, help us to realize, and so many of us do, because we have been transformed, but help us to realize you are still in the transforming business. You are still changing lives. There are lives in this room you want to change if they'll just believe that you are the Son of God, Jesus. So I just pray that you would stir in some hearts this morning and help people realize that they need to be changed from the inside out by you. It's in Jesus' name that I pray. With your head bowed, if I can offer an invitation. First, if you
All right, y'all, that was a short sermon. Like I said, I was not prepared this sermon. This past week has been crazy for me. Health issues, overworking myself. But I plan to not get to that point again, and I want to be prepared for every Bible study. So my goal is for next Bible study to be very prepared for that. And if you're tuned in, I believe I'm going to do another live today. I don't know what time. And I don't want to promise it, but I love doing these live streams, y'all. I love it. And yeah, so if you're watching and you don't tune back in today, have a blessed Saturday. I'm blessed rest of your weekend. And I'll see you next time or whenever I see you. But have a good one. Take care. And peace out.